This woman took a video of this van that was driving in front of her and she saw this. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you see this many flies? After this video went super viral, she called her friend that's a cop and they ran the plate and nothing came up. But no real investigation was done on this. Like, the police didn't get called and they did not get involved, and we still don't know who this car belongs to. And you can't deny this does look super suspicious. Like, there's something clearly dead in this van. I'm not saying it's a person, but maybe an animal? I don't know.
Things that are older than you think. Oreos were invented in 1912, which is before chocolate chip cookies and bread. Nintendo, which was created in 1889. Best system ever. The species of sharks are older than the rings of Saturn. How would you even find that out? Escalators have been around since 1859, though they were called rotating stairs. Why? Contact lenses, which were thought of in 1508 and successfully made in 1888. And brain surgery, which first took place more than 7,000 years ago and was believed to be successful. I guess we'll never know.
If you go to this island, you will die. This is North Sentinel Island. If you go anywhere near this island, you will die. The island is in the middle of nowhere and you can only access it by boat. The people on this island are called the North Sentinelese and they are all a part of one tribe. The Indian government even said it is illegal to go within 5 miles of this island because it's so deadly. If you get too close to this island, the people will shoot you with bow and arrows, beat you to death, and then consume your body. This is missionary John Allen Chow. He tried spreading the gospel to the North Sentinelese people, but they ended up killing him on the spot and eating his body.
Gruesome facts you didn't know, part 154. King Tut is the only ancient Egyptian mummy that has been found mummified with an erection. Soon after his tomb was discovered, his ancient little buddy broke off from the rest of his body. The first time Mike Tyson ever threw a punch was at a bully who took his pigeon and killed it with his bare hands, ripping the bird's head off. He said it was the first thing he had ever loved in his life. For years, Mexican singer Sergio Vega had to disprove rumors that he had been killed or in a fatal accident, constantly calling his mother to reassure her that he was okay. Just hours after he denied reports that he had been murdered, he was shot dead on the way to a concert.
What would you do if you woke up one morning and everyone looked like this? This is a terrifying reality for 59-year-old Victor Shara from Clarksville, Tennessee. He woke up one morning in November of 2020 and thought that he was living in some kind of demonic world. These facial distortions that Victor sees are caused by a very rare neurological disorder called prosopometamorphosis. Otherwise known as PMO. These images are actually a very accurate representation of what Victor was experiencing. Because he couldn't see the distortions through screens or through photos, researchers had him in real time compare a face to a photo of the same person, and then the researchers edited the photo until it matched what Victor was seeing in person. Reportedly, there are less than 100 cases of PMO, and it's not really known exactly what causes the disorder, but it's known to be a malfunction in the part of our brains that processes faces. In Victor's case, possible triggers are recent carbon monoxide poisoning, a head injury that he suffered 15 years before his symptoms arose, and his history of bipolar affective disorder and PTSD. PMO is often misdiagnosed as schizophrenia or psychosis, even though the patient is aware that the visuals that they're seeing are not in fact reality. The craziest part is that Victor still experiences these distortions. He still sees people like this in his day-to-day life, even years later. He finds that it helps to live with his roommate and her 2 children so that it makes seeing new people not so alarming. And strangely, Victor has actually found relief through wearing green-tinted glasses.
Facts about the human body that you probably didn't know. Part 1. If somebody's fart is too strong to the point where you can taste it, you're basically tasting the bacteria from their ass. Your mind has a mind of its own. I don't know about that. There are literally no pain receptors in the brain. So that means if you have brain surgery, you literally won't feel the pain after, during, or anything. After you give birth, your baby's DNA is gonna still be in your body. There's a condition out there to where you can be allergic to yourself. Insane. The way your eyes are shaped causes your vision to be upside down, but the brain just flips the image so that you see things right side up. That's crazy. Since we're talking about eyes, once your immune system finds out that you have eyeballs, you then will instantly become blind. You can literally vomit poop. Come back for part 2, y'all, because these facts are crazy work. Come back for part 2 and follow for more.
Videos that seem innocent but have a terrifying backstory. Part 5. This man kept finding food in his apartment that he wasn't eating, so he asked his girlfriend about it and she said that she wasn't eating it either. He didn't believe her, so he set up a video camera to catch her eating the food in the middle of the night. The next morning, when he checked his video camera, he found footage of a woman that he didn't recognize walking throughout his house. He called the cops immediately, and as it turns out, she had been living there for weeks. This next video shows 24-year-old Hollywood actor James Dean giving a public service announcement on the importance of safe driving habits. Nearly a week later, Dean was killed in a head-on collision where he crashed his Porsche at an intersection. The following is a home video of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer taken on Thanksgiving Day. At the time this was taken, he had murdered and eaten the flesh of 9 people.
Yeah, like I said before, it gets too expensive and it does. I have to start eating at home more.
She was the only woman ever held in Alcatraz, and what she did was pure evil. In the late 1800s, a woman named Summer Camp ran a massive plant shop in Tampa, Florida. Locals called her the Plant Lady, but they had no idea what she was really up to. Her shop's biggest attraction? A Venus flytrap over 30 feet tall. When people asked how it got so big, she'd smile and say, "Lots of protein." In 1895, a man named Wally Mart booked a private night tour, but at some point, he blacked out. When he woke up, he was inside the mouth of the giant flytrap. Miraculously, he broke free and ran for help. That same night, police raided the shop. Summer confessed immediately. She had fed 25 people to the plant. Days later, furious locals burned her store to the ground, with the monstrous flytrap still inside. Summer was sentenced to life in Alcatraz, the only woman prisoner there. But just a few months in, during a stormy night, she built a glider, climbed onto the roof, and disappeared. She was never seen again.
He ran over this kindergarten class because they were in his way. On May 6 of 2002 in Mexico, 56-year-old Jose Luis Nieto was a mechanic who lived near a school. This school would have their students participate in a flag ceremony every day. The school would have their students dressed in colorful soldier uniforms, marching with the Mexican flag while others were banging on a drum. Jose, who lived right next to the school, was irritated because since they were doing that flag ceremony every day, they would block the road and he wasn't able to come and go to his house whenever he wanted to. His mechanic shop was in the back of this house, and because of this ceremony, he wasn't able to access it. In the video, Jose is seen getting out of his pickup truck to talk to the adults about the flag ceremony, and they tell him that he has space to move to the side to go through. Jose still tells them to move and counts to 3. He then gets back into his pickup truck and rams it in full force into the crowd of 100 children and teachers. Unfortunately, 2 children aged 2 and 3 pass away from their injuries, and many others are injured, including a 4-month-old baby. When Jose was arrested, he admitted to everything and stated that he was targeting the teacher. He is currently serving a sentence of 156 years in prison.
Yo, what's up? These are scary facts about our world that you probably didn't want to know. Part 29. If you've ever been sleeping and had a nightmare that you were falling off of a building or out of the sky and you woke up kind of flinching a little bit, this is actually called a hypnic jerk, and basically what it is it's your body thinking you're about to die, so it wakes you up with this hypnic jerk. Pretty creepy. This may sound insane, but you are literally always 6 minutes away from dying, and every time you take a breath, that clock happens to restart. Lucky you. If you think about this pretty in depth, the ocean really is just a graveyard full of dead bodies and sunken ships. And every time you go visit the beach and take a dip in the water, well, you were swimming in a pool full of dead bodies. People unknowingly swallow around 8 spiders a year. Yeah, that's right, spiders are literally crawling inside of your mouth and down your esophagus, and you have no idea when or where.
Reasons the world could end us all.
She took her son's eyes out because he wouldn't close them during a prayer. In May of 2012 in Mexico, Maria del Carmen Rios Garcia had a sign that the world was going to end. So she got her family together to fast and recite a prayer. Maria told her 5-year-old son during the prayer to close his eyes, but he refused. And this prayer was like no other. They were all chanting and dancing in a circle similar to a ritual, and it was obvious that Fernando was just scared. Maria told Fernando to close his eyes so many times, and since he refused, she got fed up, so she grabbed a spoon and dug out his eyeballs. She decided to do this so she could cleanse them. A teenage boy who was locked in one of the rooms in the house heard Fernando's screams, broke free, and ran outside for help. Officers ended up breaking into the home and were met with a horrific scene. Fernando was immediately rushed to the hospital and luckily survived. He was given glass eyes and is now in care. A neighbor revealed that he thought the family was just deeply religious and didn't know that they were Satanists. Maria and her family members who were all involved were arrested and sentenced to 30 years in prison.
A Florida woman is facing manslaughter charges after leaving her granddaughter in a hot car, and this is the second time she's been involved in a grandchild's death. First, let's go back to November of 2021. 65-year-old Tracy Nix was taking care of her 16-month-old grandson. This is Ezra, and 3 days before Christmas, Tracy's husband was rocking Ezra to sleep when he left to run some errands. Ezra was left on the recliner, and Tracy was on a nearby couch, awake. Tracy would later tell police that she was asleep when her husband left. She says she woke up and couldn't find Ezra. She gets in her car, goes down the driveway, and calls her husband. She said that as soon as she turned around, she saw Ezra face down in a pond. Tracy starts performing CPR, and a neighbor calls police after hearing her screaming. Ezra's mother, Kayla, got a call that something happened to her son. She immediately drives over. She ends up getting into a head-on collision because she was so desperate to see her son. And this happened while she was 6 months pregnant. Ezra passed away at the hospital. Months later, Uriel is born in March of 2022. After Kayla lost her son, she didn't trust her mother at all. Over time, though, Kayla started to let Tracy back into her life and have supervised visits. She truly believed it was an accident and wanted her mom to stay in her life. She said, "I thought I could believe in second chances." Fast forward to November 1st of last year. 11-month-old Uriel is being cared for by Tracy, just for a few hours while Kayla gets her hair done. Tracy took Uriel to a restaurant and then went home. She said she starts practicing piano and talking to her dog. Hours pass. Some of Tracy's grandsons get to her house. All of a sudden, she realizes that 7-month-old Uriel was still strapped inside the SUV. The windows were up and temperatures reached 90 degrees. Tracy's husband immediately performed CPR, but Uriel passed away. Tracy's been charged with aggravated manslaughter, and she could face up to 30 years in prison. Her daughter said that she needs to go to prison. She said, "I will fight for them. I want justice for my son because he didn't get that." Tracy is either out on bond or currently in a mental health treatment center.
Serial Killers You've Never Heard Of, Part 16. The woman above me is Nanny Doss, but better known as the Giggling Grandma. On the outside, she was a wonderful neighbor, a great friend, parent, and wife, but behind those eyes lurked a cold-blooded killer. At only the age of 16, she married a man that she only knew for 4 months. His name was Charlie Braggs, and they had 4 kids together from 1921 to 1927. The same year, 2 of her children died under mysterious circumstances. They were divorced in 1928, and just 1 year later, she married again. He was an abusive alcoholic, but despite that, the marriage lasted 16 years. During that period, it is believed that she killed her newborn granddaughter and her 2-year-old grandson. And next on the list was Harrelson. He was spending the night celebrating the end of World War II when Doss snuck rat poison into his jar of moonshine. Less than a week later, on September 15th, 1945, he was dead. People had assumed that he died from food poisoning, while Doss here was collecting insurance money, enough to buy buy a plot of land and a house. She then went on to her third husband, Arlie Lanning, and within 3 days of knowing him, she married him. He was another heavy drinker, so when he wound up dead, they just assumed it was alcohol related. Not long after that, the home they lived in burned to the ground, and take a guess who got the insurance money. Now on to her fourth marriage, Richard Morton from Kansas. But before she could dispose of her fourth husband, her mother was in the way. Doss's mother needed a caretaker, so she moved in with them. In 1953, she poisoned her own mother, and only 3 months later, her fourth husband. In June of 1953, she met and married Samuel Doss of Oklahoma. In September of that same year, Samuel was admitted to the hospital with flu-like symptoms. He was treated and released on October 5th, but he didn't survive the evening. She rushed to kill him to collect 2 life insurance policies she had taken out on him. This alerted the doctor, who immediately ordered an autopsy, and what did they find? A huge amount of arsenic. Nanny Doss was arrested in 1954. She confessed to killing 4 of her 5 husbands, her mother, her sister, her grandson, her mother-in-law, and Arlie Lanning's mother. When recounting to the police how she killed her ex-husbands, she would laugh and giggle. She blamed her murder spree on a head injury she received as a child. She claimed in many interviews that money wasn't actually a significant role in her murders. She was just looking for the ideal husband. On May 17, 1955, she was sentenced to life in prison. Only 10 years into her sentence, she died of leukemia.
Ted Bundy.
Serial killer Ted Bundy. Brian Kohberger.
Now to the latest on the quadruple homicide that gripped the nation.
Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
The internet is buzzing with comparisons between Brian Kohberger and Ted Bundy, 2 men linked by their academic interest in psychology and criminal justice, as well as the brutal crimes associated with their names. Pointing to mugshots and clues about the crimes themselves, observers have been drawing parallels between killings that occurred more than 40 years apart. While Bundy was a convicted serial killer, Kohberger remains a suspect in the 2022 Idaho murders. However, both shared a fascination with the inner workings of crime. Bundy earned a psychology degree from the University of Washington and even worked at a suicide prevention hotline, where he was known for his calm and collected demeanor. Kohberger followed a similar academic path, studying psychology before obtaining a master's degree in criminal justice. One of his professors at DeSalle University described him as one of the best students she had ever taught. Bundy was known for stalking young, college-aged women before launching his brutal attacks, often in places where they felt safe. Likewise, the 4 victims in the Idaho murders were all university students, and their killings were carried out with an intimate and violent weapon, a knife. Police later linked Kohberger to the crime scene through DNA found on a leather knife sheath. Even their mugshots have drawn comparisons, with social media users pointing out their similar facial features and expressions. Former Bundy defense attorney John Henry Brown also noted the parallels, stating that both cases seem to reflect a killer who wasn't necessarily targeting a single individual, but was driven by a need to exert control. While Bundy's crimes are well documented, Kohberger's fate remains in the hands of the justice system.
These are the shocking photographs that a nurse took with dead patients. She was then accused of murdering 38. This is the case of Italy's so-called Angel of Death. It was spring 2014 in Italy. 42-year-old Daniela Poggiali was working at a hospital after qualifying as a nurse in 1995. She said that she got the job initially because she loved working in busy environments with a lot of people. However, the hospital she was working at started to see an alarming amount of deaths, similar to the cases of Beverly Allitt and also Lucy Letby. Suspicions around the hospital were growing due to them having over 100 deaths in just 2 years. Now, Daniela was no stranger to controversy at work. She'd made numerous enemies among her colleagues. Some said she'd given patients sleeping pills so she had an easier shift. Now, Daniela put this down to just gossipers and people being jealous of her at work. She claimed there was no truth to it, but then the accusations got even more disturbing. In 2013, there were 27 incidents of theft in the hospital. Daniela was reported for this. She was found guilty of trying to steal the wallet of a man who had simply gone into the hospital to visit his sick wife. She was also found guilty of stealing medication and food. Between March and April 2014, there were 6 deaths under her watch. One of these was a patient called Rosa. Rosa had actually come into the hospital with a non-life-threatening condition. She should have just been able to be discharged after a couple of days. However, after being treated by Daniela, she started having convulsions and died. Medications were unaccounted for, and the hospital reported this to police. Daniela was suspended from work. She was soon charged with Rosa's death. The story was headline news, along with some disturbing photos that police had found on Daniela's phone. These were pictures of her smiling and posing next to deceased patients. Now, investigators believed that Rosa was one of potentially 38 victims that were murdered by Daniela. She was charged with murder and was found guilty, and she was given life in prison, but that's far from the end of this story. Daniela served just 1 year in prison before being acquitted. She maintains her innocence in this case and states that this was simply a witch hunt. So what do you believe? Let me know in the comments.
The Silent Twins refused to speak to anyone but each other. June and Jennifer Gibbons had made a pact with each other where one of them had to die so the other could live. They were born in 1963 in Barbados, but grew up in Wales. From the moment that they were able to speak, they were inseparable. But they had a dark secret. They refused to talk to anybody but each other. Nobody even knew why. Like, they would stand perfectly still in front of people and stare straight ahead, not saying a word. And even their own family started to believe that something might be wrong with them. These girls were not dumb. They spoke in like a high speed and whispered a language no one could understand but them. They spoke in a mix of English, Bajan Creole, and inverted word. But like, what made it so disturbing was that they were speaking at like lightning speed. And they were both in perfect unison, and it was like they had two halves of the same mind. By the time these girls were teenagers, they were completely withdrawn from the world. They would spend months locking themselves in their shared bedroom, writing dark stories that are really disturbing. And in one of the journals, it said, "One of us is going to die, and it will be Jennifer." People believe that they were trapped with like some sort of psychic bond. Like, one sister could only go on to live a normal life if the other died. And at 18, they finally broke their silence. They went on this crime spree, and they set buildings on fire. They were like vandalizing properties. They were breaking into stores. And the strange part about this is they were committing the crimes together, but they weren't speaking when they were doing this. It's like they were telepathically communicating. And when they were caught, they were sent to Broadmoor Hospital, which is one of the like most famous like psychiatric hospitals in the UK. This is the same place where they would put like violent, terrible criminals. But in the hospital, doctors tried to separate them, but every time they were apart, they would fall into like catatonic states where they wouldn't eat, they wouldn't speak, they wouldn't even move. And one of the psychiatrists described this as one of the most extreme cases of psychosis that has ever been recorded. While they were in the hospital, June wrote in her diary, "We have made a pact. Jennifer has decided to give up her life for me." After spending 12 years at Broadmoor, they were finally transferred to like a lower security hospital. And during the transfer journey, Jennifer leaned over to her sister and she whispered, "I'm going to die." Then by the time they had arrived at the hospital, Jennifer had collapsed, and only a few hours later, she was dead. Like, there was no poison, no signs of trauma, but they have no idea how she died. They could not determine the cause of death. So they just listed heart failure, but they weren't even sure it was that. It was like she simply willed herself to die. The creepiest part about all of this is after Jennifer's death, June started speaking normally and like went on to live a normal life like nothing ever happened. Come over here for more freaky videos. Look at her then versus now. There should be no conversation on whether or not she was a child. Like, how are we still debating on this? On top of that, the movie The Orphan came out in 2009, and Natalya Grace was adopted by the Barnetts in 2010. And like, let me tell you, it's like they watched the movie and said that she was doing everything the girl did in the movie in real life. So this movie is about a couple who adopts a little girl named Esther, and they then discover that Esther has this rare condition of like proportional dwarfism, and she's actually an adult. And she's like violent, trying to kill them. Now, in real life, Natalya Grace was originally from Ukraine,
And so was the girl from The Orphan, by the way. And Natalya Grace also has dwarfism. And the Barnetts claimed that Natalya Grace was posing as a child and accused her of having like violent, threatening behaviors, very similar to the ones in the movie. This is a photo of her now, actually in her 20s. This is a photo of her at 7 years old. They successfully changed her birth year from 2003 to 1989. Effectively like reclassifying her as an adult. And if you don't know, they had her like living on her own in an apartment where she couldn't reach anything because she has dwarfism. Like they essentially abandoned this 7-year-old. And the mom had this like savior complex. She had an autistic son and everyone told her like he couldn't do all these things, and she helped him overcome that and be able to do these things, which is great. She like had a book deal about it. She was on a high horse. She got this daycare and she called it Jacob's Place, and he hated this. He was a little embarrassed by this. And she was kind of like, shut up, we're famous. But she really believed that she was like God's gift to this earth. She could save any child. They adopted Natalya when they heard about her story. She thought she could fix Natalya, but she couldn't. And so I think she just got fed up with it. Sounds like Natalya was exhibiting like very violent behaviors. Everyone saying that she was like, I want to kill the family. Like crazy things for a 7-year-old to say, I will say. And also they got her from a family who decided they wanted nothing to do with her. They met at this adoption agency. It was a closed adoption, so they couldn't talk to the other family. And before they were able to take her home, the agency was like, you have to pay the other family everything they paid in medical bills. It's gonna be like $7,000. But this was back in 2003, so that's even more now. But they were like, what? Can we get a lawyer? Like, why do we have to pay them? They were like, you can get a lawyer, but today's the last day she could stay here, like legally. So they just gave the agency their life savings, hoping the money would get transferred. And then it turns out the agency was known for like faking birth certificates, having false adoptions. Like the agency was a scam, and it got closed down. So when they were questioning everything about Natalya, they couldn't fact check anything. And the mom had been right and the doctors had been wrong about their son Jacob. So when she brought in Natalya and was like, I don't think she's a child, they didn't question her this round. But lo and behold, they did a DNA test in 2023, and Natalya's confirmed birth year is 2003, so she was a 7-year-old being forced to live on her own. Come over here for longer videos.
Would you think that finding a missing person's severed foot meant that they are dead? I was not expecting this case to have so many twists and turns. Melissa Caddick was a 49-year-old woman who grew up in Sydney. Interestingly, Melissa worked as a financial advisor but stated fake qualifications on her CV. In 1998, she was found to have stolen around 2,000 Australian dollars from the company she was working for. She did this by forging her boss's signature and then left voluntarily from the company. She lived a very lavish lifestyle which raised eyebrows among her peers. No one really knew how she could fund the lifestyle she was living. It's alleged that she concocted various stories to explain her wealth to her friends. Her first husband was Tony Caddick from England. The pair had a son together and they moved to Essex in the UK in 2010. Eventually, Melissa got bored of the area and told Tony she was going to Switzerland on a work trip. In actual fact, she had gone to Paris to meet with a man. This man was Anthony Coletti, her hairdresser from Sydney. Tony eventually discovered that the pair were having an affair. After Tony confronted Melissa, she moved back to Sydney with her son in 2012. Again concocting another story, she told her loved ones that she'd split with Tony due to him being abusive, which was not the case. They divorced in 2013 and she married Anthony the same year. Now, between 2012 and 2020, it's believed Melissa was involved in kind of a pyramid scheme. She reportedly gained millions of dollars primarily from her friends and family. She bought luxury cars, properties and clothes. The Australian Federal Police even raided her home on the 11th of November 2020. She was in legal trouble and was being investigated. The day after, she vanished. Her son was 14 at the time and he stated he heard a door shutting at around 5:30 a.m. He said he presumed that his mum was going for a run. However, she had left behind all of her possessions, including her mobile phone, which was obviously very concerning. Despite this, strangely, it took her husband 28 hours to phone police. Now, officers reported that Anthony showed a, quote, composed, relaxed, and seemingly uncaring persona, unlike any other person I had taken a missing person report from previously. Frustratingly, the CCTV around the area didn't actually capture the direct area that Melissa had vanished from. Bizarrely, it seemed that Melissa had been fearing for her safety. A friend claimed that Melissa made her write down a 4-letter code that she was instructed to give her brother if she went missing. In another shocking twist, on the 21st of February 2021, a shoe containing a decomposed human foot was discovered washed up on Bondi Beach. The shoe matched the size and the description of the shoes she was seen wearing during the raid of her home. DNA tests confirmed the foot was hers. However, criminologists were very quick to point out the fact that just because her foot was found, it didn't mean she was dead. She may have been captured and had it amputated, or she may have even amputated her foot herself. It could have been a way for her to evade police capture. Now, some people claimed that they believe she may have taken her own life on the day she was vanished. However, an expert report called that into question. By examining barnacle growth on the shoe, they found that it had spent no more than a week in the water. Now remember that the shoe was found with the foot inside in February and she had vanished in November. In December 2022, she was declared legally dead. Her husband still denies having anything to do with her disappearance.